Well, blessed Thursday to you as we come with your daily encouragement. Now, we still had a few more verses left before we get to the Antichrist, or called in some chapters the second beast. The first beast was a nation, and we believe that it's typically Rome or Roman-like nation. And it is telling the Christians that you'll be conquered for a while, but you are called to endure. You might be in exile for a while, but you're called to endure. Your loyalty is not on earth, it is in heaven. It is with the heavenly God who calls you. And so in verses 9 and 10, it says, let anyone who has an ear listen. See, just like Jesus, if you have an ear, let him hear. If you are to be taken captive, into captivity you go. If you kill with the sword you must be killed. Here is a call for endurance and faith of the saints. Now, part of it is, I think, a kind of acknowledgement that we are called to take up our cross. Some might argue that there is a pacifism here. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe that's reading too much into the text. What there is something similar to what Paul talks about in Romans 13. He talks about government being corrupt, but he also talks about government being a necessary tool to ensure that there is not chaos. And so it is a reminder that sometimes we had to acquiesce. We are persecuted, we have our rights violated sometimes, but sometimes we have to take on the role of prayer and ask God to bring that justice. Or sometimes we can be part of a peace movement, as I think of in India, and more specifically the civil rights movement in America, where Dr. Martin Luther King espoused no sword but peace. Now, it got him into trouble, but it also progressed things so that things would be more just too, without a sword, at least for him. There were others in the movement that were much more violent taking, and there's a warning there. The sword, if you take one, you'll be succumbed by one most likely. This is not about serving in the military. This is more espousing for your own rights. There's a time for peace and there is a time for war. And the Holy Spirit will probably give you a discernment about what tack to take. But at least as far as this persecution is concerned, the vision that John is not only describing but participating in is advising to see where the Lord will make things right in the Lord's time, and to trust that the persecution will only be for a certain time, but it too will pass. Now let's get to what you've been waiting for, the second beast, which is typically called the Antichrist. Then I saw another beast that rose out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. Now, we've already had the identifying mark of the dragon. The dragon was the devil, but it looked like a lamb. Now, we've already had the designation of the lamb who was slain, who has been willing to open the seals, has the authority to open the seals. So we've already identified the lamb looking, or at least being, Jesus. And so it is significant that this is not a beast that is rising out of the sea like the other ones that specifically designates nations. This is a person. And the person rose out of the earth. Now, some have argued that this person made a fake resurrection. I think that might be reading too much out of it. But a person who rises from the earth is not that dissimilar from when God breathed into Adam the breath of life. Adam means earth. So we're talking about a human being. And so specifically a human being, it had 2 horns like a lamb who looked like Jesus but spoke like a dragon. And if we're wanting to limit ourselves to that image, that's what we're describing. We can go on to far other speculations, and I appreciate your ideas of who this might be. But we're going to have a candidate, and specifically when we get to the number of this beast, we're going to have a candidate from history that I think marks who this is describing. But we'll get to there soon. It says that it exercises all authority from the first beast, meaning from the nation that either is Rome or looks like Rome, and its behalf, and it makes the earth and all its inhabitants worship the first beast whose mortal wound had been healed. Now, this is another area that can be speculated. There have been many attacks on Rome, but Rome still seemed to rise up above it. In fact, there were many Caesars before some of the Caesars of the persecution, the time in which this was written. So we could be referring to the assassination of Julius Caesar, and that the religion of Caesarism that would personify in the person of Caesar and of the government. We could be talking about that. Or we could be talking about someone who's imitating Jesus Christ and dying and rising again. That's another tact if we're kind of looking at it as a future candidate. But as I've said in the letters, in fact, in Peter talks about the spirit of the Antichrist. So this spirit is not just something we had in the past. It's not just something we anticipate in the future. There are other leaders who rise and try to look like Jesus, to be like Jesus, or to be like a leader who's going to revive Rome back. And you could take, like during World War II, the obvious choices of a Hitler or Mussolini being that type of leader, a human who would center themselves to be the center of attention, or would co-opt the religious images so that they would be not just honored, but worshipped. And some do worship leaders. And we dare not forget that tendency is always present in politics, whether it be the nation or whether it be a person. So watch out when you see someone usurping the symbols of the nation with their specific image specifically. Now, I'm not going to go any farther than that, but that's what you see here, is that the two beasts work together, the government structure and the person. And what does the book of Revelation call us to? Endurance. Sometimes to allow the persecution to happen, sometimes to realize that this will only be for a season. And of course, we want to say, when will it end? Sometimes we might say that even with our own struggles. When will this disease end? When will this thing that I am experiencing, this time that I wish I was out of, end? And all we're given is the command to endure and to realize it only lasts for a season. The same is true of our earthly existence. We have our earthly time, and then we have our spiritual time. That will be on for eternity, and eternity is a long time. It's so long it doesn't have any measurement. And so that is things to consider when we consider these persecutions that both Christ was allowed to experience, and, dare I say, because we have taken his name, we are allowed to experience. God will find relief for us, but sometimes the call is simply endurance. God bless you today. We trust that these continue to be words of encouragement. Take care. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow.